Hello students. Now for today's topic is criteria of good research. Before we begin today's topic, I want you to think about one simple question. What makes research good research? Suppose two students study the same social problem. For example, the impact of social media on college students. Both collect information and present their findings. Can we automatically say that both studies are good research? No, not necessarily. Research is not simply about collecting information or writing a report. Good research has to be systematic, logical, accurate, ethical, and based on reliable evidence. So, in today's lecture, as a part of unit Social Research and Introduction, we are going to understand the criteria of a good research. In other words, the qualities or standards that help us to decide whether a research study is trustworthy or meaningful. Okay, by the end of this lecture, you should be able to answer one important question. What make research a good research? So let us now look at the major criteria of good research and understand why each of them is important in social research. So students, the objective of this particular topic is to understand the key criteria of good research and their importance in conducting reliable, systematic, and meaningful social research. What is the learning outcome? By the end of this session, you all will be able to understand, identify, and explain the major criteria of good research and distinguish good research from poor quality research. So students, let's continue with our topic, that is criteria of a good research. Now, we have to be very much clear with this, that whatever type of research is being conducted, research ultimately meets on the common ground of the scientific method. It then gives a criteria that scientific research should satisfy. What the purpose should be clearly defined. Okay, so the purpose of the research should be clear and common concepts should be used, which should be clear to the people. It should not be a confusing one. Before starting research, the researcher should know what exactly I'm trying to find out. For example, if the topic social media and students, the researcher should clearly define what aspect is being studied, such as social media use and study habits. So the research project should not be a vague. If the objective itself is unclear, the entire research process can become confused one. Okay, so the second criteria. Now, what is the second criteria that we have to keep in our mind, that our research should be the good one, the scientific one? So the second criteria says that research procedure should be described in sufficient detail so that another researcher can repeat the research. What does it mean? It means a simple meaning. A researcher should clearly explain how the research was conducted, what methods were used, how information was collected, how the data was analyzed. With the help of these things, you are allowing another researcher to replicate the study. Suppose I conduct a survey, but I don't tell you how I selected participant or how I collected the information. Can you repeat my study? No. Therefore, good research must clearly describe its procedure. Then, the very important third thing is the third criteria, which is saying that the procedural design should be carefully planned so that the results are as objective as possible. Keywords which we have to use, that objectivity means that researchers should try not to allow personal opinions or biases to influence the research findings. I'll give you an example over here. If I personally believe that social media is harmful to students, I should not design my research in a way that automatically produces that conclusion. So, research should not be designed before collecting the data. A proper design helps us reduce bias and obtain results that are as objective as possible. Now, what are the fourth criteria of a good research? The fourth criteria is talking about the researcher should report flaws in the research procedure frankly and estimate their effects on their finding. Simple meaning, no research is necessarily perfect. If there is a limitation or problem, the researcher should not hide it. For example, our sample was relatively small, so the findings may have limited applicability. That is better than pretending the research has no limitations. Okay, so whatever the limitations you have found out at the time of your research, you should clearly mention over there. So a good research is honest one. If there was a problem during the data collection, it should be acknowledged. Scientific research depends on transparency. Okay. The fifth criteria is about data analysis. So, data analysis should be adequate to reveal its significance. The methods used should be appropriate, and the validity and reliability of the data should be checked carefully. The two important things we have to keep in mind, the validity and the reliability. Now, what is mean by validity? Validity is something that research actually measures what it is supposed to be measured. Reliability means would the measurement produce consistent result? So how you will understand it or how you will easily remember these words? So validity means the accuracy and reliability means consistency. So students, don't just collect the data and immediately announce your findings. You have to ask whether the data is suitable, whether your analytical method is appropriate, and whether your measurements are valid and reliable. So you need to ask your question that whatever research I'm doing or I have done, whether I'm getting the answer of these questions in my research, yes or no. Yes, then only your research you only yourself able to find out whether your research is good one or not. The next sixth criteria says that conclusion should be limited to what is justified by the research data. This is very important. A researcher should not make a conclusion that goes beyond the evidence. For example, if you studied 100 students from one college, you should be very careful about making claim about every student in the entire country. Your conclusion must match your evidence. Don't make a bigger claim than your data allows. Remember this thing, data you have to analyze, and this analysis will be based on your evidences, and this will give you the conclusion. So you don't need to give your personal opinion in the conclusion. The seventh criteria of a good research is the greater confidence in research is warranted when the researcher is experienced, has a good reputation in research, and is a person of integrity. Now, what is mean by integrity over here? Integrity means being honest and ethical in conducting and reporting research. A researcher should not deliberately manipulate finding or misrepresent the research. Research quality is depending not only the methods but also the researcher. A technically good method can still be misused if the researcher lacks honesty and integrity. I hope I hope you have understood the criteria of good research. Now move to the qualities of a good research as under. Now, when we are talking about the qualities of good research, so they are having a four major qualities. The first is systematic, second is logical, third is empirical, and fourth is replicable. These are the four particularly important for your exams. Let us understand one by one. So research is systematic when it is structured with the specified steps taken in a specified sequence according to well-defined rules. It does not reject creativity, but it rejects guessing and intuition on the basis for your conclusion. So research follows an organized process. So what is an organized process? To identify the problem, plan research, collect data, analyze data, and draw the conclusion. You don't randomly jump from one step to the another one. Systematic does not mean researchers cannot be creative. It means creativity must still operate within a proper research process. So, according to your exam, good research follows a plan and organized sequence rather than relying on guessing or intuition. Now, the second one is good research is logical. Now, good research follows the rules of logical reasoning. It particularly mentions induction and deduction. Now, what is induction? Induction is nothing but part. We are going from part to the whole. We observe a particular case and develop a broader understanding. For example, you observe several students and identify a pattern in their study behavior. Then what is deduction? Deduction is nothing but going that going from premise to the conclusion. So in the deduction, we begin with the premise or a general idea or a statement and arrive at a conclusion that follows from it. So to understand what is induction and deduction in a simple manner, so induction is nothing but going from specific to the general, and deduction means we are going from general to the specific one. Yes. So logic prevents research from becoming a collection of random observation. There must be a reasonable connection between the evidence and conclusion. The third one is a good research is in or is empirical one. So good research is empirical, meaning it is related to one or more aspects of a real situation and deals with concrete data that provides a basis for external validity. Now, if we try to understand in a simple meaning that is empirical research is based on evidence, data from reality. It is not simply I think this happens. Instead, I collected evidence and this is what the evidence shows. For example, instead of simply saying students are stressed because of examination, a researcher could collect data from students about examination related stress and analyze the data. So, what we are doing over here, remember, empirical, when we are saying the good research is should be empirical one, so empirical research is always depend on the real world evidences, facts, reality. Okay, so the next one is the good research is replicable. So the final quality represent is about its replicability. So what does mean by the replicable? So researchers should be able to repeat the research using the described procedure. Okay. Why is this important? Because replication allows researcher to check whether the finding can be verified. For example, I'll give you an example. Researcher conduct a study A and researcher B follows the same procedure. If similar findings are obtained, confidence in research can increase. Okay, so replication is important because one study alone may not always be enough. So repeating research help us build a strong basis for knowledge and decisions. So for that, the good research should be a replicable one. I hope you all have understood. Today we have discussed the criteria for good research as well as the qualities of a good research. Okay, so I hope you have understood. We'll meet you in our next lecture and we will discuss our next point. Thank you.